No, but this endgame will be lost.
Oh, look at Vishy there. He's so unhappy.
And he
He smiles.
smiles. He
Why?
smiles because he knows that this is a
Why?
position where he had it under control. Black can simply pick up the queen, and then you just queen yourself.
No, but then the bishop. Maybe black can preserve the bishop. Can black try to do that?
Yeah, but I think the queen ending is so
Queen
winning.
endgame is just winning.
It's so winning that we don't need to even think about
Did you
that.
see
Yeah,
that
I think this
smile?
is.
It's never seen before. Vishy smiling at Magnus.
And Magnus
I don't
smiling
know.
back. Peter, what happened there?
I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
We witnessed an absolutely great game between Vishwanathan Anand and Magnus Carlsen in the Global Chess League today. So this was the position where Anand had just played King C1. And from here, what happens next is absolutely remarkable, exciting to watch. This was the best game of the league or even this year so far. So let us first see how we reach this position. We'll quickly go through the opening and then we'll try to make sense of what happened next. Magnus Carlsen played a move that surprised everyone towards the end of the game to clinch the win. So let us go through the opening. Anand started with e4 and Magnus Carlsen played e6, French. Now d4, d5, knight c3, the Winawer variation, e5, takes, and knight out and queen g4. Fairly standard. Basically, Anand is attacking g7. Magnus plays g6, Anand plays h4, h6, and h5. g5, f4, attacking the pawn. Queen a5, launching an attack on this side. So all this is mainline theory. So they blitz out the moves very fast. You can see over here in the times. They're both in preparation. f5, queen comes back, and g4. So Magnus closes out this side, keeping a weakness over here on h5, which becomes important later. And the pawn structure is pretty nice for black. Vishy takes. Magnus just plays knight e7. He's keeping the capture for later and keeping the option of b6 also for later. Bishop d3, and now he takes. Knight e2, knight a5. So getting some counterplay against white's pieces. So knight is going to exchange itself for one of the pieces, one of the bishops, so that the play there for white is reduced. And you have to see white cannot castle here. So king is stuck in the middle for a while. Queen f2. So Vishy decides to take this to an endgame. Takes, bishop d7 and a4. King f7, rook b1, occupying the open file. b6, and now bishop c1. Vishy plays a few very nice moves here to gain what looks like a good advantage. So he reroutes the bishop to a good diagonal. He puts a bishop on b4, and now the knight also jumps in. Position looks nice, knight b3, exchanging of that nice knight. Knight c4, takes, and knight d4. And now rook c8, and he goes a5 as well. So Vishy, the former world champion, is taking control of the situation. b5, and here rook d1, bishop e8, and knight e2, a6, and rook d4. Vishy is again ready to get into the d file with his rooks. Magnus plays rook d8 and rook d1. Takes, bishop c6, and now rook comes back. g3 check. This was a critical moment of the game. Magnus at the right moment plays g3, creating counterplay. Basically, he wants to, if king takes, he will play rook g1, g8, and then he will take on g2. And even if knight takes, he'll play rook g8. And if the knight moves, g2 hangs. And if the knight cannot move, the king also cannot move. So he gives up that pawn, and Vishy doesn't take, which is actually fine. Rook g8 anyway, knight d4, rook d8. Of course, you can't take here. There's a pin, right? So here Vishy plays bishop d6, a very nice move. Now if knight take bishop, then knight take bishop, and Anand would be better. So bishop has to be saved. Bishop e4, and now bishop comes back to b4. Rook d5, king f1, knight goes back, getting ready to exchange it off. King e1, knight c6. So this is a nice move because if knight takes, and we'll have an endgame. So here knight e2 was played by Vishy. Takes, and takes on g2 and takes on g3. So material is still even. There is weakness here for white, two weaknesses in the position and the double pawns. So Magnus has got a position where he can grind Vishy down. Bishop f3. Now the white knight is stuck here, right? The king attacks the bishop, bishop goes to d1, king d2, bishop goes to g4. King e3, king e8. Now the king is trying to get in this way. And once a knight moves, the king will be able to come to c6, and then if possible to c5. So king d2, knight e7, takes, and here comes the critical moment. This is the moment from where we have to analyze the position deeply. So basically, Anand goes here to create a fortress. This is a passive move, right? So why did he play it? So basically, what he's saying is, we'll see the moves that he played to understand why he played it. So king moves, king moves, king moves, king moves. The black king will get in. The black king will get to c5, and black will force the white king to move. The knight can't move, right? Because the pawn is hanging. The bishop can wait here forever, but the knight can't wait. So king has to move. So white is in Sukswang. He moves the king, and black gets okay. Magnus just waits a little bit, and then he plays b4, which is a question. We'll see why. So he goes b4. The point being pawn takes, king takes. But Anand's point is, after pawn takes, king takes, he'll just play c3, let him take the pawn, and he'll just stay here and keep going up and down. And the knight will stay here. The black king cannot enter anywhere. The square is covered by the knight. And even if the black king comes here, the white king will stay here, a2, b2, a3. And there's no way to make any progress here for Magnus. So this is a fortress. This is what Anand had seen, and this is what he was trying to create by playing king c1. Now, king c1 is a mistake because Anand had basically more active way to solve the problem, but that's of course difficult with 1.5 minutes on the clock. The correct way to make a draw here is king e3, more active. Now black will try to get in. White, Anand can just play knight e2. It looks like the knight can't move, and the white king is the knight. If it moves, the pawn hangs, but the knight can move. We have to give up the pawn. And after bishop takes h5, and let's say knight d4, bishop will, let's say, go back so that the pawn can go forward. Just king f3, h5, and king g3, and there is no problem here for white. This is again a fortress. The knight is staying here. The black king cannot enter at all. And this pawn is firmly blocked. So white will again wait. G3, H3, H4, G3. And there is no way for Magnus to enter here. So this was a way to make a draw, but of course very difficult with that much time on the clock. So that was the moment where Vishy played king c1. And we go a few moves ahead. And Magnus just attacks and then goes back. And he plays b4. So this is a very important moment because if Magnus takes back with the king, he knows it's going to be a fortress, right? Magnus realizes this is Vishy's idea. And Magnus searches and finds a way to continue pressing. And that sends the board into chaos. So he plays after takes. After Anand takes, Magnus plays king d4. The king gets in. It's risky, right? But the bishop is keeping things under control and the king is getting in into the act. King f2 almost traps a knight. It traps a knight, right? And the pawn hangs. So the black king gets active. Now Anand is under pressure. Anand plays c3, forcing the king down. And here Anand plays b5. He plays accurately. So this is the correct way to make a draw. The plan is, after takes, white will have a pass pawn here. And white will also play knight takes, pawn takes, and create a pass pawn here. So two pass pawns. And the bishop can't control both. Bishop will be overloaded. So that is the way for Anand to make a draw. And he does that. After takes, he goes a6. I mean, you can also play knight f5 here. Knight takes f5 directly is possible. But that gives some chances to Magnus, right? So he goes a6, does Anand. Magnus plays king d2. Because if he plays b4 now, which is his counterplay, he will anyway need to play king d2 later, right? So he goes directly. And here, the engine likes white's position. Because after king d, if he plays king d2, what is the continuation? What will white do? Knight f1 check. The king is forced away. If king goes here, king c3. And if king e2, just b5. And white wins. Sacrificing the knight, but then white wins. So basically, he had to go king d2 directly, which is why he did not play b4 in this position. He played king d2. Now after king d2, b4 is coming, right? Because b4 takes, c3 comes with check, c2, c1, and queens. So things are very exciting now. Anand pushes, keeping this in his mind, right? And here Magnus goes bishop d5. kind of stopping the e pawn and keeping an eye on this diagonal. Here, Vishy plays knight takes, which seems to be a mistake. So Vishy thought that in the chaos that happens, he should be able to hold because he'll have two pass pawns. So what was the correct method? Vishy had to play knight f1 and kick the king. Maybe what he missed was after king e2, the knight can just go to g3, and if king f3, then knight f5 comes, right? So king f3 is not possible. So the knight doesn't get trapped, and knight f1 kicks the king away from the crucial square. So knight g3 and the king will go back, and this could be a repetition. So this was the way to make a draw for Anand, but Vishwanathan Anand played knight f5, believing in the power of his pass pawns. Again, this is a very complicated position, and there is no way any player would have played better than Vishy or Carlsen. It was just a masterpiece, and both of them played extremely well. So knight f5 takes, and Vishy goes e6. Magnus goes b4. Vishy goes e7. Magnus takes, and here Vishy goes king a2. The position is lost because Magnus's play here is faster than Vishy's promotion. The queen endgame will be winning for Magnus. So basically here after c2, so he goes c2, and if Vishy queens this pawn, then this would be a better endgame for Carlsen. I mean, if you promote this now, bishop will just take it, and because of the position of the pawn, king, and queen, and the white king, this becomes a better endgame, queen endgame for Magnus. That's winning for Magnus. Which is why Vishy in this position after c2 promotes the a pawn first, so that the bishop has to go there. And now he promotes the e pawn. Now things seem to be in control, right? And here Magnus plays bishop e4. The computer gives a question mark there. We'll understand why soon. So let's understand what happened. Vishy gives a check. Magnus goes bishop d3. So Magnus is about to promote, and Vishy cannot do anything about it, right? He goes queen d4. And this is where Vishwanathan Anand sits back and smiles at Magnus Carlsen. And Magnus smiles back. It's a very nice moment there, which I haven't seen before during a chess game. The two players looking at each other and smiling, like in the middle of a heated battle. The reason was here Anand believed he had a stalemate. Like the point is, if Carlsen queens, which is what his plan is, queen 3 check, and now it's a stalemate. This is what Anand had seen. Now let's go back. Let's go back a few moves after this move, bishop e4. What should Carlsen have done instead of bishop e4 to keep it winning? He had to play c3 to avoid this stalemate idea. He had to directly play c3, and the point is black will anyway queen, and the queening comes with the threat of checkmate as well in that case, and no stalemate ideas. So that is why c3 is important there. But no human would be playing c3 here. So Magnus plays bishop e4, and now Vishy plays check. And in this moment, Vishy played this move. Vishy still had a draw, a very difficult draw actually. So to understand how he could have drawn this, let's understand what happened after queen moves this moment. This is a genius move. I mean, nobody expected Magnus Carlsen to play knight promotion here. I mean, nobody. Not the commentators, not Anand, not the teammates. So basically, it looks like it's going to be a draw. Black promotes, queen e3, stalemate. But Magnus Carlsen, with this extreme willpower, promotes to a knight with seconds left on his clock, with check. And king cannot come to a1 because of knight b3 fork, but king can of course go to a3. Now pawn push. Magnus is saying, I've got a knight and bishop and a king, and my pawn will promote. And there's nothing you can do about it. So Vishy plays queen b6. So Vishy's counterplay is he got to take this pawn, come back and give up the queen for it. Can he do it in time? So Carlsen plays knight e2. Vishy takes the pawn. Carlsen plays pawn c2. Vishy comes. Here the transmission has been a bit wrong. So Vishy resigned here after c2. But the line continues if queen c6, if black promoted, if Carlsen had promoted, Vishy will have to give up the queen and king will take back. And the h pawn is not in time. Knight takes, pawn push, and knight b6. This line is very important to understand because this is winning for black, right? This is why Anand resigned. Now, the way to draw there was a very difficult move. Anand played queen d4, remember, with the idea of queen e3. And then after the queening, after the knight promotion, he had to go back to b6 to attack this pawn. That cost 2 moves. So instead of queen d4, the draw was to directly go queen b6. And now if the same thing happens, knight promotion. If queen, again, stalemate is there, right? So that's still there. And if promotion to a knight in this position, then it's a check. So king will go up, same line, king a3. Now black will push. Queen takes pawn. So in the previous line, Anand had to go back and then take the pawn. Here, Anand is one tempo ahead. So he will take, and after, if c2 comes, the queen comes back. And if knight e2, just push. And see the difference of one move. And after takes, this is now, wow, h7. And this is now actually still equal. The white Anand would promote here, but somehow it's still equal. But Anand has good chances here. So this is what they were discussing after the game. Anand probably saw the idea of queen b6 and then directly taking instead of queen d4 and then queen e3. Instead of that, he had this queen b6 move. That was so tough. But just spare a thought for Anand. He had played like a tiger, like he defended really well against, however, a very strong-willed opponent who wanted to win, and he would go away only with a win. That was Magnus Carlsen's mindset. Just have a look at this moment, just one more time, where Magnus, instead of promoting to a queen, right here, when everything looks like a draw, over here he promotes to a knight. I mean, just imagine. You should see the live commentary of that game. That was a historic moment. If you saw it live, you will not forget the way Magnus played this. The moment where he promotes to a knight when no human expects it. That was just a stroke of genius there by Magnus Carlsen, the world number one.